Rose Martin, and this is Real Life, the time that we get to spend with our very favorite life coach, Susan Harf, who gets us through gives us tips and strategies for how to navigate those tricky situations we get ourselves into or that we just have questions about. Like you, I can't wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm happy to see you, and I'm so glad that you decided to join us today. So today we're going to ask the question, can you be friends with members of the opposite sex?
Ooh, can you be friends? I would say yes and no, because yes, sometimes if either person is not interested romantically, and maybe no if the feelings are different on either side of that relationship.
Yes, and maybe. So let's start out by talking about two people who are single. And you have a date. And the person says to you, I would like to be friends with you. And you may have a reaction that says in your mind, oh, they really don't like me. Or you may make an assumption, they don't find me attractive. And unless you really ask the question, why do you just want to be friends, you're not going to know the answer. And I see people sort of before they make that conclusion. So people will say to me, I went out on a date and I thought it was going great. And then he said to me, I'd just like to be friends. Or you remind me of my sister, or something like that, that led them to believe this is not going to be a dating relationship. And the person said, I'd like to see you again. So we make assumptions. And I guess my first thought is, don't do that. I think when you make an assumption, you may make the incorrect assumption.
Well, I'm thinking, you know, it's hard to ask that question right then because you really don't really know each other. You're unsure. You don't really have the courage. And then you're in your own head thinking, okay, yeah, they don't like me or there's something wrong with me and I better just let this one go. And then I'm thinking if they ask you to date again or on another date, you might be like, well, maybe I can change their mind. Maybe if they get to meet me again,
yes,
that they're going to like me a little bit more.
Yes.
You know?
And sometimes that does happen. Usually people don't come out and tell you right from the get-go, I just want to be friends. Because it takes time to sort of figure out how you feel about someone. So often people will meet once, twice, three times, and then one or both decide, let's be friends. What's interesting to me is that I have heard men say to me, I don't want to just be friends. So if she's not interested in me, I'm not going to be her friend. I've also heard women say, I don't have the time for that. I'm looking for a husband. And I'm at the person in their 30s and they're looking for a husband and I don't need another friend. So sometimes one or both of you may decide we're not only not going to be friends, we're not only not going to be in a dating relationship, but we're not going to see each other again because.
But there can be space, don't you think, that you might not be romantically involved or perfect for partners, but you might be really great friends.
And I believe that if you're both single and you've decided you don't want a dating relationship, but you like them, you find them to be an interesting person, you should be their friend because that now has opened up your network. And who knows, if you think they're a nice person. I've had many clients, women in their early 30s, who want to get married. And they meet somebody online, they meet on a dating app, and they decide they're not attracted to the guy. But he was a nice guy. He could have a friend. He could know lots of people who might help you in some way or might enrich your life. So I don't think that you automatically need to leap to, I'm done with him.
But you said something interesting. You said if you're single. So is there a different line if you're married? Let's say you've gone to your class reunion and you connect with people that you knew, several decades ago, and they're of the opposite sex and you want to be friends. Is that off limits for you?
Well, that's an entirely different story. So let's first finish the two single people. So we're saying when two people are single and they are available for relationships and one or both of them just wants to be friends, I say accept that invitation to be a friend, and it is possible to be friends. And it's also possible to start out as friends, and I have known couples for whom she was the Sunday night date, not the Saturday night. So Saturday night, he dated the girls he was attracted to. He wasn't supposedly attracted to her. They were friends. And they saw each other on Sunday night for pizza. And they would talk about their dates on Saturday night with other people. They are now married.
Oh, well, I have a follow-up question for that, though. So let's say one of you decide, I want to just move this into friendship only. Do you think it's okay to do that by text, or do you think it needs to be done in person?
I think it really depends. You know, I find, for me, I like in-person everything. I find that it's much more personal. I get a lot of information from people's body language. I find that it's just all the way around better communication when we're in person. But we are in the advent of the computer and online, and people do a lot online that they didn't when I was growing up. So if people feel comfortable, if both people feel comfortable communicating online, I guess that's fine for people, or texting, I think it's fine.
Oh, and now I've got another question. So let's say you've done that, and you've said we're going to be friends, but the other part of that relationship, the other person is like, I think I'm going to try a little harder. I'm going to continue to keep coming back, and you've said it again, and you've said it again. Then how do you handle that when you're like, you know, I said I would be your friend, and you're not giving it up, you know, you're still hounding me for something more?
And usually that happens when the communication is not in sync, or you don't believe the person. So, and that happens. And that happens for many reasons. But what needs to happen is you need to have some clear, concise communication about what it is you want and what it is you don't want. And when you do that, you also cannot send a mixed message. So for instance, there are people, and actually I'm one of them, who flirt.
Oh, really, Susan?
I'm a flirt. I flirt with babies. Yeah. I flirt with women. I flirt with men. I flirt with, and it's not, for me, it is not an intimacy sexual thing at all.
Yeah, you're open and friendly with everybody.
And that can be considered flirting with some people. Like when I say to you, Rose, I got a secret for you, or I got a surprise for you, that's flirting. That is a form of flirting, but it's one of the ways I communicate. If I'm in a friendship with someone and I don't want anything more than friendship, then I can't do that. Then I have to be very cognizant of how I'm communicating. So here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to lean over and be in the person's space. I'm not going to put my hand on their arm. I'm not going to be physical with them. And now I'm now acting like the single person who is saying, I don't want anything more with you than friendship. I'm not going to give you cues that's going to mislead you, because let's say a guy and a girl have decided, okay, we're going to be friends, but then you're the guy who doesn't want to be anything more with her, and you lean over and you're always touching her, or you grab her arm, or sometimes you kiss her hello, or you're too physical with her, that is giving her a mixed message, and especially when she wants to be more than that with you. I often say to women, if he's told you, believe him that he doesn't want anything more than friendship. And sometimes women will say to me, but I can win him over, like you're saying, or I can make him change, or I can be something different. That's the worst thing that I like to hear. I hate hearing that from women who want to change to be more of something for someone else. I just think that's horrible. So the fact is that when you find yourself not believing the person, that's a time to stop and think, wait a minute, he told me straight out and that he doesn't want anything more than friendship. But people have a way, and the women who I see in not necessarily therapy, but coaching, say to me, yeah, he did say that, but his actions say something different. You know what? We always are seeking, we're always going to find what we seek. So if we're looking for something, we're going to turn it into something because we're seeking it. So in other words, we say to ourselves, yeah, he said he didn't want to date me, but he called again. I've already seen him once this week. Maybe, he wants to see me again. We conjure up all of these other facts that really are not facts of the relationship. They're facts in your head.
And that also goes for women. You know, all of us, if we want something, we're going to find what we're looking to see. But I'm also thinking, if you say you only want to be friends with someone, then don't be, you know, constantly texting them or calling them to help you out or to do other things that would maybe cross that line in a way.
Exactly.
So like using someone else to
Exactly.
get things that you want to have done. For
Exactly.
example.
So, absolutely. Okay, so now let's talk about, let's move this into, you are involved in an ongoing monogamous relationship or you are married. So, whether you're
One person or both? All right, is there one side married and one side single, or both married?
either.
Okay.
Either. Okay, so let's talk about if someone is single, but they are in a committed relationship, and they meet somebody who wants to be friends with them of the opposite sex. The first thing they need to do, so now we're not talking about married people, we're talking about I'm single, but I'm in a committed relationship, I'm dating someone, and this person wants to get to know me. The first thing I need to say is I'm dating someone. And then they may say, well, but we're in the same class, or we work in the same place and we have projects together, and I get that, but you know, there's nothing, we can have lunch once in a while, it's
Or
fine.
you're not married yet.
Correct. I still think that you need to keep reaffirming and restating to the person on an ongoing basis, remember, I'm in a committed relationship. Remember, I'm dating someone. And never give them a mixed message.
Do you disclose that to your significant other, that this other person is entering your life and they want to be your friend?
Yes. Yes, you absolutely do. You do disclose that. You know, I'm working on a project with Joe, and Joe and I had lunch today. You definitely need to make it clear to your significant other that you have a new friendship in your life.
No secrets.
No secrets at all.
Okay, so now that we've got it down now, if we're both single but in a relationship. So now one of us is married, and we
Okay.
reconnect with someone from our past, or we meet someone new.
And before we get to that, when you tell Joe that you are in a significant relationship, and this is an office friendship, and he says to you, but I like you. Okay, that immediately should be a red flag to you to say, then we can't go out to lunch. Then we need to strictly be colleagues. I am not interested in you, Joe. You need to, look him straight in the eye and make it very clear, this is not ever going to be a relationship. Never. And so you need to draw those boundaries very clearly, very succinctly, and don't give them a mixed message. Even if you are like me, and when you're talking to someone, you touch their arm or you lean over, you don't do that. You don't do that when you know that somebody has already told you, I have feelings for you, and you're never going to reciprocate, and you don't want it to get messy. And especially when you're in an office relationship with them, because you can't avoid them. You have to work with them, and you don't want it to go there. You absolutely don't want it to go there. And when people say to me, well, I didn't want it to go there, but it just did, I don't believe you, because there are things that you're doing to give that person a mixed message.
So things just don't happen.
Exactly.
You don't just say it just happened.
Exactly.
It didn't just happen.
Things don't just happen.
Okay.
It's kind of like when your teenager says to you, well, I wasn't smoking, but I was in a room with other people who were, and then they passed me the cigarette. Well, how did that occur? If you said you're not smoking and you don't smoke, what do you mean they passed you the cigarette? If you don't want that cigarette, how did it end up in your hands? So there are things that we do that give people messages that have nothing to do with what we say. It's how we act and what we don't say sometimes, and those are things that we do that end up being mixed messages, and you are just as responsible for that as the person who is trying to to have something with you that you say you don't want.
You know what's tough about that though is changing your natural behavior. So if you're a hugger or you're with someone and that you're just naturally friendly and gregarious or whatever, and you're a toucher, and you will have to turn that off if you're in that situation. So what I'm hearing you say, when you create those boundaries, listen and be aware of what other people are, the messages they're sending, so that you can send the appropriate message that you want to convey back.
And I don't necessarily totally buy the idea that it's hard. I really, so I'm somebody who's very touchy-feely, and I am very warm that way, and I use that. I am very clear that that's not going to happen with somebody that I don't want to give a mixed message to. That's never going to happen.
I think that's an important message to share with everybody.
So, okay, so now let's move to we're married, and you say you want to have a relationship, friendship with someone else. So the first thing is, usually you don't say it. Usually it kind of evolves. And I want to bring up, actually, this would be a good time to share with you a couple of statistics that I found. There were a couple studies done about this. And there was a survey done by Match.com, and they surveyed 1,400 members. And they found that 83% believed a completely platonic relationship is possible with two people who are married. However, 62% of those people had a friendship that became physical or romantic.
Oh.
So 83% of them said it's possible, no problem. But 62% of them said that they had a friendship that changed and became romantic. Okay, another study, similar results. Mansour Harris and the last person was Kurzweil. They found that 64% of men and 44% of the women that they surveyed reported that their opposite sex friends became their sexual partners.
Oh, really?
So 64% of the men they surveyed and 44% of the women had friends with someone that turned into a romantic relationship. Okay. Or maybe not even an ongoing relationship, but a sexual partner.
Those numbers are bigger than I thought they were going to be.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to think about that. We need to talk about that in the context then of two people are married and they find themselves having a friendship with somebody. The first thing that comes to my mind is, don't kid yourself. If you are seeking that out, then you need to ask yourself, why? Why are you seeking that out? Why are you seeking out a relationship with somebody else when you're married? First and foremost, your best friend needs to be your spouse. That is a given. Mm-hmm. Your best friend needs to be your spouse. Now, that doesn't mean that your spouse shares every aspect of your life. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything you do with your spouse. It doesn't mean that they have to share in every activity with you. But you need to find appropriate people to share those other activities with. So for instance, my husband is never going to go shoe shopping with me. I might go with Rose.
Right.
I might go with you, Rose.
Yes.
But I'm not going with him. He doesn't want to go shoe shopping.
Right.
I don't really want him to go. I'm not interested in his opinion about the shoe, but I'd be interested in yours. Mm-hmm. So my girlfriend is an appropriate person to say, let's go do that together. Another man would not be an appropriate person to seek out for that activity.
Yeah, so I can see where you're making those really clear distinctions. And I'm also, what's running through my mind is, let's say in the workplace, there's colleagues that, are of the opposite sex and they get along and they're working together constantly, and they may go out, in a group of people for a drink after work or see each other through special projects. Then I'm wondering if you include your spouse in saying, hey, I'd like to have some people over to make chili on Sunday. Or, I'm thinking that, this might be someone that we can invite over to do something with. So does that in a way make a difference if you're not seeking out an individual personal time and you're involving your spouse?
Yes, it absolutely does make a difference. And once again, you're a great life strategist because that is a strategy. You invite your spouse in on that. And now here, let's talk about though the office relationship, because that's a whole arena that's very important to talk about, because men and women are working together every day, all day. And you do get close with your colleagues without question. So here are some situations where it's perfectly acceptable to have a close relationship with a colleague. When you know that there is no way that you would ever be attracted to this person, and you've gotten cues from them that they are madly in love with their spouse and they are in no way ever going to be attracted to you. So I have colleagues that I have become close friends with that frankly I wouldn't be with them in a sexual way if they were the last person on earth.
Right.
I am so not attracted to them, and I love them. They're my friend. But the reason why I can be in a friendship with them is because that is not ever going to turn into a different situation. Now, that is different than when that might happen. So, if you have a colleague who you work closely with, and you can't say to me, if he were the last person on earth, I would never be interested. If you can't make that statement, then you should not be around them any more than you have to, and don't start being social with them. And if you ever are in a social situation, you make sure there's a group involved, and better yet, invite your spouse. So those are two completely different situations. Another different situation is if you have a different sexual orientation. So I have friends who are gay men. There is no way that that relationship with them is ever going to turn into a romantic relationship. It ain't going to happen.
Right.
And so I am very comfortable being close friends with gay men because I know they are not a threat to me, to my relationship at all, with my husband at all.
Yeah, and I think those distinctions are really important to make. So, what I'm hearing through all of this is like, first of all, where are you and what mixed signals or signals are you sending? What kinds of directness are you giving in terms of being a friend or not being a friend? If you can't answer those questions to yourself, then it's not okay to pursue that in an individual basis. And it's more important to think about why that person is kind of coming into your life and important right now, to what role are they absolutely going to fill. And I think that's the answer that I want for you to explain about a little bit. Like, why do you want it?
Well, and the why now, I'm so glad you brought that up, because the why now is a very important question to always ask whenever you are in a situation that you may not fully understand. Why am I seeking this out now? And the answer will clue you in on your behavior, which will then let you know that it's wrong. So, in other words, the why now might be, well, I don't feel fulfilled in my marriage. Or the why now might be, I can't be open and honest with my spouse about this subject and I can be with someone else. Instead of what you're doing is you're triangling in another person into the dyad of the marriage relationship. Instead of doing that, turn to the marriage relationship and say, how are we going to make this better? But also you brought up the question, why now? There are other questions I want you to be aware of. So one of the other questions is, if you find yourself getting ready to go see this person, this friend that you have now made, and you're thinking to yourself, I wonder what they're going to think about this outfit. That's a clue. That's a clue that you're not just friends, or that it might be moving in a way that you don't want. Secondly, things can change. So even though somebody says, I don't want anything more than friendship, if you're starting to have any kind of feelings, or you're starting to feel from them that they're having feelings, it's done. Full stop. You need to stop the relationship. You know, sometimes people will say to me, and this is very narcissistic, by the way, why should I have to change my life because I got married? Do I have to all of a sudden give up my other friends? No, you don't have to give up your other friends, but if you think that when you got married that you didn't need to change your social life, you're wrong. Because you shouldn't be going to the bars by yourself. You shouldn't be going with a group of women to the bars on a regular basis. You shouldn't be doing some things that you did when you were single now that you're married. So your spouse needs to be your best friend. That needs to be the person you socialize with. You don't discuss intimate things with other people. You don't become friends with people from the opposite sex and discuss anything intimate with, especially about your relationship. And those are things that need to change when you get married. So those are all sort of questions and things you need to be thinking about. The other question to think about is, am I doing anything in secret? And if the answer is yes, full stop. If you can't tell your spouse everything about what you're doing and who you're doing it with, then there's something wrong with what you're doing, and you shouldn't be doing it.
Susan, you've answered it all right there. Thank you so much. You know, that's why she's our favorite life coach, right? She's got all the answers, and she's going to find a way that we can find our own way through these situations. For Susan Harf in Real Life, I'm Rose Martin. Please join us again next time.